Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump's transition team says he now accepts the U.S. intelligence community's view that Russia tried to interfere in the presidential election. Mr. Trump was briefed by top intelligence officials across multiple agencies on Friday after openly questioning their findings for weeks. President Obama, meanwhile, said in an interview yesterday that the report's findings are unambiguous.
The Russians sought to interfere with the election process, that the cyber hacking that took place by the Russians was part of that campaign.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin has since responded to the findings of that U.S. intelligence report. A spokesman for Putin said the allegations are, quote, reminiscent of a witch hunt. Retired General Michael Hayden is a former director of both the CIA and the National Security Agency, and he's now a principal at the Chertoff Group, a global advisory firm focused on security and risk management. And he joins me now from Washington. Thank you so much for joining us, General. Not surprisingly, we are now hearing from the Kremlin about this latest U.S. intelligence report linking Russia to meddling in the U.S. election. And, you know, they're not that impressed with the report. The spokesman who talked about it said it was reminiscent of a witch hunt and said there really wasn't much information in there. Moving forward, though, what does all of this mean in regards to U.S.-Russia relations?
Well, Anne-Marie, first of all, what the Russians did, were we doing it, we would have labeled it a covert action, something in which the hand of the American government was intended to remain concealed forever. And so it's not surprising that the Russians are denying what is essentially a Russian covert action. So I think we've covered all we need to cover about the Russian denial at the current time. Anne-Marie, this is part of a larger pattern of Russian behavior. A lot of people want to look at it in the electoral box or in the cyber problem box. Those boxes are too small. We've got a problem with the Russian Federation box. It has to do with Crimea and the Ukraine and threats to the Baltics and weapons in Kaliningrad Oblast and the arrival in Syria in the Middle East for the first time in a half a century, in the indiscriminate bombing of people in Aleppo, and fooling around with legitimate American electoral processes. What we've got is a Russian state that actually, in this case, President Obama is quite right, isn't resurgent, isn't that much growing in strength, but is certainly growing in its willingness to put its finger in a variety of events around the world, trying to seek a seat at the table and a growth in Russian influence, no matter what it takes.
So this is just one of many incidents then. It's part of a bigger, a wider strategy, you say, but this is what we're talking about right now. And if you were advising the president-elect, what would you tell him to do moving forward? Well,
certainly all the things that President Obama has announced so far, they're fine. To my mind, incomplete, and even he suggested there could be other things behind the screen. But again, Anne-Marie, think of this not as a cyber issue, but as a larger issue. So maybe the response here is we change our attitude and our actions in Syria with regard to the moderate opposition. Maybe we sell very robust defensive arms to the Ukrainians who are being threatened by Russian forces. And if you want to go long, Anne-Marie, the primary Russian leverage on our European friends is energy. Why don't we make it American policy to wean our European partners off of their reliance on Russian gas? I'm from Pennsylvania, Anne-Marie. We got gas in the Marcellus Shale. We know how to get it out. We know how to liquefy it. We know how to ship it. Why wouldn't that be a bold, strategic American move that would undercut the ability of the Russian state to do these kinds of things in the future?
Okay, so perhaps also sanctions. John McCain and Lindsey Graham have asked for additional sanctions on Russia because of the hacking. But, you know, we've already heard from the president-elect. He says, hey, it's great to have a good relationship with Russia. Anybody who thinks otherwise is, you know, doesn't understand the situation. So what does that divide between some very outspoken lawmakers and the president-elect? What does that divide mean for the future of our relationship with Russia?
Yeah, so I think the president-elect is right. You'd be stupid not to want to have a good relationship with the Russian Federation. You would be really stupid to try to seek a good relationship with the Russian Federation, independent of Russian action. And we can't get to a happier place with the Russians with the current pattern of Russian behavior. So this can't be cost-free. This can't be unconditional love from the part of the new president to the Russian president. We've got to draw some lines here and expect some behavior from the Russian Federation if we are going to define our interests and their interests as more coincident.
So let me ask you one more question on a different topic before we have to let you go. General, confirmation hearings begin this week for cabinet nominees, including Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson, who has well-documented business ties with Russia and Vladimir Putin. What questions would you want answered from Mr. Tillerson?
Directly about the ties with the Russian Federation, to understand a bit more about the nature of that relationship, and then try to divine what Mr. Tillerson will think now in a different job, when he's not representing the interests of ExxonMobil, but moving forward representing the interests of the broader United States. And Anne-Marie, let me make a broader comment. General Mattis, General Kelly, Mike Pompeo, Mr. Tillerson, these choices are very heartening for people of my background, certainly heartening for me. I look forward to their confirmation to begin to fix some of the concerns I have with what the president-elect alone himself has been saying. These are wise, mature folks when it comes to these kinds of issues.
All right, General Michael Hayden, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.